Did you know that RBTs have to take a 40-hour course? That is just one of the qualifications that needs to be addressed on the road to RBT certification. We discussed the SLP, BCBA, and RBT certifications in our new ethics course From Silos to Synergy, where I talk all about how do you become a speech therapist, BCBA, RBT, and how can we communicate collaboratively together. I had come across an amazing RBT course, 40-hour RBT course. And I just had to have Allyson on the show. So Allyson Wharam is a BCBA instructional designer, mom of three, and the founder of Sidekick Learning. She has put together some amazing and organized courses. She has a 40-hour RBT course, and she also has a supervision curriculum. Both of these things are very, very difficult to find great resources. And when her information came across my desk, I just knew that I had to meet her. She did a 2-hour supervision course for us this June. We actually have all 4 hours that you need currently to get your BCBA supervision hours. So those are in the ABA Speech Connection now. And I am going to do a talk for her later in August about the power of joint attention. This is a really wonderful resource if you are really struggling with how do I find a great 40-hour RBT course, and how does one become an RBT? Because it's not just the course. There's a lot of other things that need to be complete as well. I think a lot of people have questions about, well, how does somebody become a BCBA and how does somebody become an RBT? So today we are breaking down what this 40-hour RBT course looks like. How do you become an RBT? You're also going to learn about how you can provide supervision to trainees who are becoming BCBAs in a way that's more effortless as well. I can't wait for you to tune into this conversation with Allyson Wharam. I'm Rose Griffin, a speech therapist, board-certified behavior analyst, and founder of ABA Speech. It wasn't all that long ago that I felt overwhelmed by providing therapy for my autistic students and any students who were not yet speaking. Fast forward through many doubts, tears, research, and courses, and you will see the framework that I use today and share with over 60,000 readers weekly. One that will help you support your students and feel more confident in the process. I created the ABA Speech podcast to give you simple, step-by-step strategies to help you reach all of your students wherever they are on their communication journeys. If you're a speech therapist, BCBA, RBT student, or parent who's looking to help all students develop a way to communicate with the world, you are in the right place, friend. Let's get started. We have a great show for you today. We have my colleague and friend, Allyson Wharam. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I am excited to get into what we're going to talk about today, a couple things, but we've really been digging into how to support RBTs here at the ABA Speech Connection, because I feel like it's such an important job and there's so much that you need to learn. And in 2026, RBTs are going to have a CEU requirement. So on our end, we've been doing some RBT focused courses because that certification was created, maybe it was over 10 years ago. I don't remember the exact date, but there are now over 200,000 people who have an RBT certification. So it's a lot of people. And when I started in the field, that wasn't even something that existed. So
yeah, I think it came into being like, right. I was a technician as it started. I was technically never an RBT. I was always just a technician. But yeah, no, it's interesting that the numbers are huge in terms of the growth. We think the BCBA growth is exponential. The RBT growth is even more so.
Yes, it's staggering. I just put together a really cool course. It was like From Silos to Synergy, and it was all about communication. It's an ethics course for BCBAs, SLPs, and RBTs, which is available in our CEU library at the ABA Speech Connection now. And I was really kind of digging into like, when did this certification start? How do you become this certification? And how many people currently have it? And it was amazing to see the number number of people who have that certification. So with that comes a lot of responsibility. And
Yes.
I think that I connected with you probably maybe through Leanne Page, our mutual kind of colleague. And I remember getting access to your RBT. You have an RBT course, a 40-hour RBT course. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best course I've ever seen in my life. I need to connect with this person. But so tell us how, you got the idea to create the 40-hour RBT course. That's just one of the things that RBTs, need to have. And there's a lot of courses circulating, and probably some are better than others. And I just felt like yours was so well done that I wanted to make sure a lot of people knew about it. And you have a lot of nice marketing and social media and all the things, but it's just such a great course. But 40 hours, what inspired you to put that together?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, one of the first things that I thought about is, like you said, there's so many other courses out there. Is there a need for something else? And in kind of evaluating the options and looking at what was out there, it became very clear that, yes, there is still a need for a very intentionally designed 40-hour training. Like you said, 40 hours is a lot, and it is also not enough. I say that a lot. It's a ton for them to learn at one time, and it is a lot of content. And at the same time, it is the tip of the iceberg of what they need to know. But it does at the same time set the foundation for the rest of their career. It sets the foundation for their time at a new organization if they're onboarding. And so, it can sometimes be treated, from what I've seen, as we just have to get the 40-hour course out of the way, and then we can actually start to learn. And that is just a lot of time to spend without seeing really meaningful outcomes. And so, my background, I'm a BCBA, but I also have a background in instructional design. And so I just saw in particular a need for a 40-hour training that was a little bit more interactive, a little bit less passive, and that was just designed really based on both giving a solid conceptual foundation, but also giving them the skills that they need in applied practice. Again, acknowledging that this is only the beginning of that journey. So that was kind of my inspiration. And now we beta tested about this time last year. And so it's been fully rolled out for about a year now. In our work, we're working with a number of really, really fabulous organizations who have deployed this across their entire organization, and just continue to get really great feedback that it is meeting that need. But it's been a labor of love. 40 hours of content is a lot of content.
It's a lot of content. As somebody who has put together, usually every other year, I like to put together a 5-hour course, and it's a lot. I mean, it's just a lot of information to put together and the way you want to convey that information. And I am in the CEU space, so I see a lot of courses done by lots of different people. Yeah. And when I looked at yours, I was like, oh, this is really nice, because I feel like there's this sense of, some people want to take whatever is the free thing, or some people want to take whatever, thing is out there. But this is a really well done course. But let me ask you that. Do people usually get hired into an organization, and then that organization gives them course choices, or there's one that they use, or does the organization typically pay for that? Or is an RBT ever paying for this 40-hour course on their own? I've never really thought about that, but that's a big thing to think about.
Yeah, in some cases, an RBT will pay for a 40-hour course on their own, but more often than not, although our data is going to be skewed because we're working with organizations who are deploying this across their organization, usually the structure that we have seen is that the organization has this as part of their kind of onboarding flow, that you go through the 40-hour training, and that they're paying you, not only paying for the training, but paying you for that training time. What that looks like in the context of all of their training really depends in terms of, are you also doing shadow sessions? Are there live sessions accompanying this? What sort of check-ins are you getting along the way? Or are they relying more heavily on the on-demand content? Most of the organizations we work with have sort of a hybrid where they are working, they're doing all of the on-demand content, but of course they're also making sure on the ground that there are check marks, and, they're making sure that their people feel supported.
Oh, that's great because I know when you go to a day of training, it's like, why is that the longest day you've ever lived in your life? Even conferences. Last year, I went to 12 conferences, got a booth, did a keynote, did all the talks.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're sitting in those sessions, it feels so long, even though the information you're learning is important. So that's nice to hear that people are kind of breaking it up into like, what is best practice? How can you help people feel supported in this role that's very new and all new information? But for
Yeah.
people who might be new to the RBT certification, can you just share? And we talked about this a little bit in that course that I just did, From Silos to Synergy. We talked about each certification. How does somebody become a speech therapist? How do you become a BCBA? How do you become an RBT? Because I think that's some of the disconnect when we're collaborating is that BCBAs may not know that a speech therapist, like I never took a class on autism, like not one single class. I just am here in this position because I'm passionate about helping autistic learners. But there could be other speech therapists out there who have never worked with a student with AAC, who have never worked with a student who engages in unsafe problem behavior. And so I think that kind of just learning about each certification is a starting point on when we come to collaborate. This is at a bare minimum what the person has needed to do to get the certification. Yeah. So can you just tell us a little bit about how somebody becomes an RBT?
Yeah, so there are a couple of just kind of base requirements in terms of just background. Like you have to be 18 years old, you have to have a high school diploma, you have to pass a background check. Those are just kind of the bare minimum things. In terms of the competencies, we have the 40-hour training, which is, it's like, again, it's a lot of content, but it's also still the tip of the iceberg. But that is kind of the classroom learning they're required to get is 40 hours. There are more guidelines now coming out specifically for the 2026 requirements of the breakdown of the 40 hours of content. Before it was, just align it to the task list. Now there are specific minimums of, for example, you need to spend X amount of hours on like basic ABA concepts and X amount of hours on actual skill acquisition and behavior reduction procedures. And that's the biggest section. I think it's about 20 hours on actual like applied procedures and things like that. And so there is a little bit more guidance. There was always some with the task list, but it's a little more explicit about what needs to be covered in the training itself. But once you finish the 40-hour training, you have to do what is called the competency assessment, which is with someone who is a BCBA, and they're actually seeing if I ask you about this certain skill, so like data collection, they have to actually demonstrate competency in that area. Some of them can be demonstrated through more interview questions like data collection, but a lot of them can only be, the more applied skills can only be through either role play or with a client, and at least some of them have to be done directly with a client. So there is sort of a sign off of you are not just getting this 40-hour passive sort of learning. You have to demonstrate that you're understanding that. And then once all of that is done, you can apply to take the RBT exam. And then that's sort of the final benchmark to getting that certification.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, it's fascinating to talk about something that has grown so rapidly because I'm getting really old. Like I'm only 46, but I am planning, like, I know what I want to do for my 50th birthday party. So this is how old I am because I remember when the RBT didn't even exist. I mean, it wasn't a thing. You know what I mean? Like it just didn't exist. I don't know. It was like that when I worked in non-public programs before the RBT certification, it was just, that is that person's behavioral technician. I think that's what we talked about. And so I think that it's nice that we shaped up this certification, but with that comes all types of ways to get certified. And I'm sure that people taking variety of courses, that's really just kind of like the tip of the iceberg of your learning is like once you really get into the trenches and you start working with students, then you start to have all these other questions about what's best. And then everybody's level of support in their environment is going to be different. And that kind of flows into supervision and things like that. I know that's something that we want to try to cover in the ABA Speech Connection down the road is specifically RBT supervision, like how to provide RBT supervision. Because when we become BCBAs, we talk about supervision in general, but I don't know a lot of places or a lot of courses where they're discussing, okay, now you're a BCBA, you're new here, and now you have these RBTs that you need to supervise. And then don't you think that's like a whole other skill set in supervising other
Oh,
people.
for sure, for sure. And I think what is the most difficult about that, I know we're going to talk about fieldwork here in a minute, is there's often, and not never, but in most cases, in most arrangements, it's not set up for you to supervise other people during your fieldwork. And so you become certified, and then all of a sudden, that's one of the biggest, most significant parts of your job is actually overseeing other people implementing the plans. And it's one thing to know about, procedures and things like that, but how do you teach someone how to do that, and not just teach them, but how do you actually coach them in the moment, give them feedback, all of those different things that go into that. What do you do when they are not following what you've taught them? And so I do think that is one of the biggest difficulties for a new BCBA. It's not just that I'm learning how to do this job, it's I'm learning how to do this job and now really oversee other people doing this job.
Yeah, that's really difficult. And I know, like, I taught this ethics class at Kent State for 4 or 5 years, and we would start the course by the Bailey and Birch text and looking at the task list, the ethics code, and everything. And then the second part of the course was talking about more of these soft skills of being a supervisor, which I feel like if I was a student, I probably would have blown off that part of the class. But
Yeah.
I used to always tell the students, no, this is the most important thing, because you can always reference the ethics, guide, but this is it, like soft skills of like building a rapport and how to work with adults. And I think that is just so important, especially when you're new in your role, you're new to being a BCBA, you're potentially new to just like, this is your first job, maybe. I think that's really hard. So, there's a lot to be said for like just even coaching and support for people that are new in the field. So I think that's great to bring that up.
And, sorry, I was just going to say for that 40-hour course, that is one thing I wanted to highlight, that is part of what is required in there is some of those professionalism, communication for an RBT. How do I advocate for myself in supervision? How do I deliver feedback back to my supervisor about what's working or not working in a way that is, not going to damage that rapport? How do I deal with a parent asking me questions about the plan that really are something that the BCBA should answer? So all of that should be covered in an RBT course too, not just that the onus is on the supervisor, but that the RBT can sort of advocate and ensure that their supervision is effective as well.
Yeah. And that's what's so hard, I feel like, in the RBT role is that every organization is going to be organized differently. And you're going to have some people that are just naturally better supervisors. And I'm sure some people feel really overwhelmed by their role and they feel like they can't allot enough time to being there for RBTs. I know, we provide teletherapy in Washington State, and we've worked with so many different organizations, and you can just see the different level of how people provide support and training for people in that role. And it's just very, very different, and so they may not even have guidelines if you're working for a new ABA clinic and not a larger one about how to handle some of those things you even just said. What if you're an RBT and a parent requests you as a friend on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, or, I just always think social media because, I spend a lot of time there. But there's just a lot of things that come up, right, that are extremely nuanced. And so it's good to talk about these things because I think that RBTs need support, and I think that people that are supervising RBTs need support as well. And I'm always trying to talk about what the RBT certification is, because as I share information on, Instagram, I've had some people say like, well, there's this person who's an RBT, and, they were in a state where RBTs would go into the classroom and they're like, oh, they're always on their phone or they're on an iPad. And it's like, well, they could be putting data into Central Reach or something, or some type of database EMR, but people don't understand exactly the role. So I think kind of demystifying it for people that are listening, that RBT role you can look a lot of different ways based on the setting and who you're supporting. So I think the people taking your 40-hour RBT course are really going to be set up in a great position because it's not just passive learning and it's so organized and set up great. And are you getting that feedback from the clinics that have been using it in their organizations?
Yeah, we are. We're getting really great feedback on pass rates, on engagement. We do some internal surveys and things like that. And we're constantly in the mid 90s in terms of people saying that the course is engaging, that they feel prepared for certification, that it was interactive, and just basically that they feel good about this next step, which I think after doing 40 hours of training and what that could feel like is, I think, really great, really, really great data. But yeah, really good information from organizations and feedback there. And the other thing I wanted to mention about kind of how we have things structured is that's a little bit different from other RBT trainings, is that we've really tried to infuse the more compassionate, person-centered approach to ABA into our course. And so RBTs are not exclusive to working with autism, neither are BCBAs, but the reality is that a majority of the people that are certified as RBTs are working with individuals with autism or autistic individuals. And so we've included, we've tried to give them a little bit of a primer of, here's what autism is, here is how it shows up, but we're not trying to change that person inherently. We're trying to give them the skills to live a more adaptive life that, increases their quality of life, and that we need to listen to the people that we serve. And then throughout as well, talking about the televisability of services. How do we think about goals? So not that they're the ones setting goals, but how do we prioritize what we're working on from that social validity perspective, maintaining dignity and respect, trauma-informed care, all of those different things. I know they sound buzzwordy, but it's more than just here. We do have sections that explicitly talk about those things, but we've also infused them into all of the content. So as we're talking about reinforcement, for example, we're talking about all of those things as well in the context of this specific sort of behavior change procedure. And so that's the other thing that we see organizations more and more coming to us from, is that there are these other 40-hour trainings out there. And not only are they more passive, that, like you said, the conference presentation where you're just sitting there for an hour and listening. And I have ADHD, so I know it's worse for me probably yes. than some other people, but I struggle with that. And so, for example, our longest videos are about 20 minutes. Most of them are like 5 to 15 minutes, because we just want to keep that pace and then let them engage. But yeah, so that's kind of how we've thought about the training itself.
Oh, I love that. And I just had somebody on, Ron DeMusi. He's talked about school-based BCBA roles here at ABA Speech and in the connection, and he works with FTF Consulting. So that idea of televisability, I feel like that might come from Dr. Hanley, or at least
it does.
Yep, okay, that's what I remember.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I remember that from the 10-hour training because I took it. And I love that idea that, what we're doing is really for the students. We're not trying to change anybody. We're trying to help be a support. And I think that's really great. And definitely the message. That's why I think our business is kind of aligned together. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So you also have a supervision curriculum, which is always important to me because a while ago, for probably 5 to 6 years, I co-owned a business called Supervision Academy with my friend and colleague, Rachel Torrance, and she has taken that over as I've gotten so busy with ABA Speech. But supervision is something that is just so hard. I remember when I was marketing that business, I was hot and heavy on TikTok, and I was making lots of videos for Supervision Academy. And what was wild to me is that even those videos were super old, like I had stopped making content years prior, I would still get like 1 to 3 people every single week emailing me because they were searching for the hashtag BCBA supervision over on TikTok. And I would talk to people. I do these 15-minute discovery calls for years. I did that. And to hear these horror stories of people really getting on the BACB website, contacting 10 people. They could never find a supervisor. They had BCBAs in their area, but nobody had the bandwidth to supervise. So I know that it's really, really tough, and supervision's just hard. Me and Rachel kind of embraced it at the time. Now I'm too busy to do all those things. But at the time we were just all in on that because a lot of BCBAs are like, ugh, I don't want to supervise anybody. I don't have time and I'm not interested, So can you tell us a little bit about your supervision curriculum as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was really born out of, well, first born out of my own experience as a trainee. So as I mentioned, I have a background in instructional design. So I actually got my master's in instructional design at the same time that I was doing my fieldwork supervision. And so really I was learning about, and my course sequence. So I was learning about what makes effective instruction and all of those different things. And then I was going through this fieldwork experience and seeing how little it was actually structured, how much was left to chance of the supervisor that you had. And I was really lucky because I was in a trainer position. I had a lot of leeway with our funding source to do things. And yet I still just remember thinking from that broader lens of just like, I'm really lucky, but do other people have this opportunity? And then as I became a supervisor, it became really clear that, yeah, I was lucky. And even then, as I say, I was lucky. It was a struggle. It was really hard. It was a lot of me creating my own experience as a trainee. I was trying to figure out, what do I need to know? I didn't know what I needed to know, but I'm trying to figure that out at the same time. And so then, fast forward to becoming a supervisor. And I've supervised in a number of different contexts directly through the organization that I have worked for in the past, on the ground, intern, practicum supervision, remote supervision from a university, and then running our remote supervision program. So I've seen kind of the range of that. And I think what struck me and has struck me more and more as I dialogue with other supervisors all the time and now organizations is that it is, again, this very intensive process, but there's often very few resources. And so I remember as a new supervisor, there are books, there are things like that you can pull from, but I just constantly felt like I was still reinventing the wheel. Like nothing was ready for me to just kind of put it into practice. And not that a curriculum replaces that, it still requires clinical judgment and guidance and feedback. But what we've done in terms of our curriculum is it is all online. And so the benefit of that is that we can embed those really practical tools without you having to create them in terms of linking directly out to articles or having templates embedded in there or evaluation criteria and rubrics and all of that just in a usable format that you can pull from presentations, visual handouts, all of that stuff. But it's also not just like this hodgepodge of stuff. We really started with thinking about what do you need to know as a new BCBA and then designing backwards around that. And I think that is the other thing I see a huge gap is that we are often thinking about like, what are the activities that someone can do rather than starting with what does someone need to know? And then how do we design all of the experiences around that? And so I think more and more organizations are really thinking about that systems level lens of, I want to make sure that people are all getting a well-rounded experience, no matter who their supervisor is, that we're not leaving this up to chance, essentially.
There is so much left up to chance. So that was, a lot of it for me is because I do so much training that I had a lot of those ready-made materials. And I love research because here at ABA Speech, in the connection, I'm always trying to like read research and bring it into practice for treating clinicians. But most people don't have an education company when they're providing supervision. So it's really difficult. So I think that's great because I know one of my good friends owns it's a large, but it's a mom and pop, it's not like PE-backed ABA clinic. And I know it was always hard for her to find people to supervise because it's just like, okay, I've seen all these clients. I'm doing so many things. And now I have to be a support to others and make things, right? If you want to do it well, because BCBAs are usually pretty type A and they want things to be organized. So if that's you, Allyson's site is really good. I'm not getting paid to say that. I just like really appreciate it because I feel like the bar sometimes is set so low for some of these things. It's like the wild, wild West. We've like just grown really like the trend lines. If you see them at an ABA conference, it's like, well, 10 years ago, we had 5 people at the conference. Now there's 400, and we're flying in all these important people. So there's just, I feel like it's been hard to keep up with everything, right? So I think that you're positioned nicely in the market just to offer these really cool, organized materials, which I appreciate. And I'll have some of that stuff in the show notes. We'll link to some of these different things that I'm talking about. And just because I think they're a helpful resource. I get asked like a lot of random random questions about, like what course should I take? Or do you have help with this? And so now it's nice because I don't do everything here at ABA Speech. So it's nice to partner with people who kind of have an aligned message. And we're going to be doing a collaboration on August 19th. Yes, I'm excited about that. You did a supervision course for us in June. That was nice. You did a 2-hour course. And then my friend and colleague from Supervision Academy did a 2-hour course on supervision. So we have all the supervision CEUs in the ABA Speech Connection. And we potentially are offering those in a bundle too, but we'll see. But those are all readily available because I think it's great to be able to talk to people who are providing that supervision, who have those resources and support. And then I'm going to do a talk for your group about the power of joint attention on August 19th.
Yes. Yeah. So this, we'll have the registration linked and available for you all. But yeah, this will be a live CEU. I'm excited to collaborate on this. It will be free. And we'll offer CEUs for it. So keep an eye out for that. But joint attention is a topic I think that first off, I don't think a lot of people fully understand, but like it's talked about a lot, but I think it's hard to conceptualize exactly what that means. And I've just seen a huge need for just more discussion about like what is developmentally appropriate, more of those pivotal skills, and all of those things. And so I think this will land really nicely. I think a lot of people will benefit from it.
Well, I'm excited. That's one of my favorite talks. One of my friends said it was like Nikia Dower always shares what SLP BCBAs are doing. And at one point she was like, and this is Rose Griffin's favorite talk. She did it again because like this one year I did it as a keynote. So like, I was like, I want to feel really good on that stage. So I did it like 50 times, you know what I mean? Like virtually and in person. So it's one of my favorite talks. So that will be super fun. We'll have the show notes, the link for that to register. But where can people find out more about you and your work if they want to find out?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is sidekiclearning.net. I am also active on LinkedIn. We have a company LinkedIn page. I am also on there, Allyson Wharam. My last name is Wharam because I know that is not a common last name if you want to find me. And then we're also on Instagram at Supervision Sidekick and intermittently on TikTok as well when we feel like venturing out there. And I cannot remember, actually, to be honest, if we are Supervision Sidekick or Sidekick Learning on there, but one or the other. If you search BCBA Supervision, our videos will probably come up. But yeah, we love to connect with people and yeah, would love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to connect.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.